The stagecoach wheels cut through snow like knives through silence. Inside the cramped compartment, cold seeped through every crack in the wood, carrying with it the smell of wet leather and pine. The woman sat alone, her back straight, despite the violent rocking, her gloved hands resting on a worn carpet-bag that had seen better years and kinder roads. Vera Quinn was 32 years old, though the winter light made her look older. A thin scar traced across her upper lip, a souvenir from a bar fight in Cheyenne 3 years back when she'd learned that questions about missing women could get you more than answers. Her eyes gray as January clouds stared at the frost patterns on the window without really seeing them. She was looking at something else, something 18 months gone but still burning fresh. The letter lay open in her lap. The paper had gone soft from handling the ink, faded at the creases where she'd folded and unfolded it 100 times. The handwriting was familiar as her own heartbeat. Nora's script always slightly slanted to the right. The letters carefully formed by someone who taught herself to write by candlelight after long days of work. Vera's lips moved silently, forming words she'd memorized weeks ago. Dear Vera, Tin Creek is colder than I remembered. Mr. Merrick is kind, but something here is wrong. The town feels like a place where secrets go to hide. If you receive this and don't hear from me again, please, come find me. The stage hit a rut. Vera's hand closed around the letter, crumpling it slightly before she smoothed it out again with careful fingers. Outside, the landscape had turned white and barren. Trees stood like charcoal sketches against pale sky. No birds, no movement, just the endless whisper of falling snow. She folded the letter one more time and tucked it inside the silver locket hanging at her throat. The locket was old, tarnished, barely worth its weight in metal. But inside was a photograph taken 12 years ago in Denver. 2 girl sisters, arms linked, smiling at a world that hadn't yet taught them what it cost to trust. The younger girl was Nora. The stage began to slow. Vera felt it in her bones before she heard the driver's call, a sound muffled by snow and distance. Tin Creek, end of the line. She gathered her bag and stood hunched beneath the low ceiling. Through the window she could see buildings emerging from the white. A church steeple dark against gray sky. A row of storefronts, half of them with boards across the windows. A single street running through the center of town like a scar through flesh. The stage lurched to a stop. Vera stepped down into ankle-deep snow. The cold hit her immediately, sharper than she'd expected. Wyoming winter had teeth. She pulled her coat tighter and looked around. Tin Creek was dying. You could see it in the empty hitching posts, the drifts piled against doorways that nobody bothered to clear anymore. You could see it in the way the few visible residents moved slowly, as if they'd already given up on getting anywhere that mattered. A mining town past its prime bleeding population with every passing season. The church bell began to toll, slow measured strikes that echoed off the surrounding hills. Someone was being buried today. A man stood waiting near the church steps. He was tall and thin, dressed entirely in black that made him look like a shadow that had learned to stand upright. His face was pale, clean-shaven, with eyes that seemed to focus on things other people couldn't see. He held a small bouquet of dried flowers, their colors long faded to brown and gray. He saw her and approached with careful steps as if the ground might break beneath him. "Miss Webb," he said. His voice was quiet, precise, each word measured out like medicine. Vera adjusted her grip on the bag. The name felt strange in her ears. Lorelei Webb. The identity she'd borrowed from a woman 2 years dead, a name pulled from a forgotten grave in Montana. But it would serve. "Mr. Merrick," she replied. He offered the flowers. They trembled slightly in his hand, though whether from cold or nerves she couldn't tell. "Welcome to Tin Creek," he said. "You're just in time for a funeral." The service was held in a church that smelled of old wood and older prayers. Vera sat in the back, Silas Merrick beside her, watching the sparse congregation gather. There were perhaps 15 people in total, scattered among pews that could hold 100. The coffin at the front was simple pine, hastily constructed, the kind of box a man makes when death comes too often to warrant fancy carpentry. The deceased was a miner named Hutchins. Old used-up lungs finally giving out after 30 years of breathing rock dust. The pastor spoke words that had been spoken too many times before, his voice carrying the weight of repetition. Ashes to ashes, dust returning to dust. Vera didn't listen to the sermon. She was studying the mourners. In the front pew sat a couple that didn't belong in this dying town. The man wore a tailored coat, dark wool, that probably cost more than most of the houses here. His hair was silver at the temples, his face carrying the kind of confidence that comes from owning things. A limp was visible when he'd walked in, favoring his left leg. He sat with his hand resting on a silver-handled cane. Beside him, a woman in elegant black. Her face was composed, beautiful in the way of expensive china, perfect and cold. She wore gloves despite the warmth of the church, her posture absolutely straight. A small hat with a veil obscured her eyes, but Vera could feel her watching, assessing. Abel and Miriam Frost. Vera had done her research before coming. The richest people in Tin Creek, owners of the failing mine that had built this town and was now slowly killing it. 3 rows back sat a young man barely out of his teens. Dirty blonde hair, face too earnest for someone who worked underground. His eyes were red, but not, Vera suspected, from grief over old Hutchins. This boy cried often and for other reasons. Near the door, a woman sat alone, hands busy with knitting needles that moved in constant rhythm. She was perhaps 40, worn in the way frontier women often were, but her eyes were sharp. She glanced up, once met Vera's gaze, and something passed between them. Recognition, though they had never met. And in the corner, trying to be invisible, an old man in a threadbare suit. His hands shook. Even from across the church, Vera could smell the whiskey on him. A doctor's bag sat at his feet, the leather cracked and stained. These were the people of Tin Creek, the ones who remained, the ones who couldn't leave or wouldn't. When the service ended, they filed out into the snow. The grave had been dug that morning, the earth frozen hard enough that it had taken 2 men with pickaxes most of the night. They lowered Hutchins into the ground without ceremony. The pastor said his final words. The frozen dirt hit the coffin with sounds like stones. Vera stood at a distance watching. Silas remained at her side, silent. The man with the cane approached them. Up close, he was handsome, in the way of men who'd once been powerful and hadn't yet accepted that power was leaving them. He smiled, and it was practiced automatic. "New face in Tin Creek," he said. His voice carried easy authority. "Silas, you didn't mention expecting company." Silas shifted uncomfortably. "Miss Webb arrived today," he said. "From Kansas." The lie came smooth. Vera had prepared it carefully. Kansas was far enough away that nobody would know, vague enough that details didn't matter. Abel Frost extended his hand. Vera took it. His grip was firm, testing. "Welcome," he said. "Though I must warn you, Miss Webb, this town isn't what it used to be. The mine's struggling. Most people are leaving." "What brings a woman to a place like this?" Mr. Merrick's letters spoke of peace, Vera said. Her voice was steady, giving nothing away. "I need peace." Something flickered in Abel's eyes. Interest, perhaps, or calculation. "Peace," he repeated. "Yes, we have plenty of that here, perhaps too much." The woman in black had joined them. Up close, her face was even more striking. High cheekbones, dark eyes that saw everything and revealed nothing. She studied Vera with the kind of attention usually reserved for livestock at auction. "My wife Miriam," Abel said. Miriam inclined her head slightly. No smile, no welcome. "A mail-order bride," she said. It wasn't a question. Vera met her gaze. "Yes." "How?" "Practical," Miriam said. The word carried edges. An uncomfortable silence settled. Silas cleared his throat. "We should return home," he said quietly. "Miss Webb has traveled far." Abel nodded, but his eyes remained on Vera. "You look familiar," he said. "Have we met before?" "I don't believe so." "Strange," he said. "You remind me of someone, a woman who used to live here, Nora Quinn." Did Silas mention her? Vera's heartbeat remained steady through long practice. She'd learned years ago how to keep her face empty when hearing her sister's name spoken by strangers. "He mentioned a former clerk," she said. "Yes," Abel said. "Tragic story. She died about 18 months ago. Suicide. Shot herself. Such a waste. She was memorable." The way he said the word memorable carried weight. Vera filed away for later examination. "I'm sorry to hear that," she said. "These things happen," Abel replied, "especially in towns like this. The isolation gets to people." He smiled again, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I hope you fare better, Miss Webb." He tipped his hat and walked away, Miriam gliding silently at his side. They moved toward a carriage waiting on the street, black and polished, as out of place in this dying town as jewels in an ash heap. Silas let out a breath he'd been holding. "I apologize for that," he said. "Mr. Frost can be intense." Vera watched the carriage pull away. "No," she said. "He's exactly what I expected." The house sat on the edge of town, attached to a larger building that served as Silas Merrick's place of business. The sign above the door read Merrick Undertaking and Carpentry in faded letters. Through the windows, Vera could see the shape of coffins in various stages of completion. Inside the house was clean to the point of severity. Every surface scrubbed, every object in its precise place. The smell of formaldehyde and wood shavings permeated everything, mixing with the faint scent of lye soap. Silas led her through the front room, past a desk covered with ledgers and careful records, into a narrow hallway. "Your room is upstairs," he said. "It's small but comfortable. I hope it will suffice." The stairs creaked. At the top, a short corridor with 3 doors. Silas opened the middle one. The room was indeed small. A narrow bed, a washstand, a desk by the window, with a simple chair. But it was warm, and the bed looked clean. On the desk sat paper ink pens arranged in neat rows. Vera set her bag down. "This was Nora's room," Silas said quietly. "My former clerk. She lived here for nearly a year before she passed." He said it without looking at Vera, his eyes on the desk, as if he could still see someone sitting there writing. "Did you know her well?" Vera asked. The question was dangerous but necessary. Silas was silent for a long moment. "Yes," he said finally, "better than most. Not as well as I should have." What was she like? He turned then, and in the dim light his face looked older, haunted. "She was kind," he said, "troubled, intelligent. She read constantly, wrote letters, kept journals. She had a beautiful hand." He paused. "She also had secrets." "Don't we all?" Vera said. Silas nodded slowly. "Yes," he agreed. "I suppose we do." He moved toward the door, then stopped. "Miss Webb, yes, if you need anything, please don't hesitate. I know this arrangement is unconventional, a mail-order marriage to an undertaker in a dying town, but I will treat you with respect. You have my word." "Thank you, Mr. Merrick. Please," he said, "call me Silas." When he left, Vera sat on the bed and let herself breathe. The room still held traces of Nora. She could feel it, the way the desk was positioned to catch morning light, the small mark on the wall where a picture had once hung, the faint scent beneath the soap and wood, something floral and sad. She stood and moved to the window. Outside, snow continued to fall. The town stretched below, quiet and half dead. Somewhere in those buildings, in those cold rooms and silent spaces, lay the truth about what had happened to Nora Quinn. Vera touched the locket at her throat. "I'm here," she thought. "I came like you asked. Now show me what you were hiding." Night fell early in winter. By 5 o'clock the town was lost in darkness, broken only by scattered lamplight. Silas prepared a simple dinner. They ate in silence, the only sound the scrape of fork on plate and the wind outside, after Vera helped him clean. He worked with methodical precision, washing and drying each dish exactly the same way, returning items to their designated spots. She recognized the pattern. a man who found comfort in ritual, in order in things that could be controlled. "I usually work in the shop after dinner," Silas said, "preparing for tomorrow's service. You're welcome to read or rest or whatever you prefer." "I think I'll retire early," Vera said. The journey was long, of course. She climbed the stairs and closed the door to Nora's room behind her. Then she waited, listening. After 20 minutes, she heard Silas descend to the workshop below. The sound of hammer on wood began steady and rhythmic. Vera lit the lamp and began to search. The desk first. 3 drawers each, organized with the same precision as everything else in Silas Merrick's world. Paper envelopes, extra pens. A Bible well worn. A book of poetry, Wordsworth, with a pressed flower marking a page. She opened the Bible. On the inside cover, written in Nora's hand, "Property of Nora Quinn. Christmas 1880. Vera's throat tightened. She remembered giving Nora that Bible. Their last Christmas together before Vera had left for Montana to track a bounty that had turned into 3 years of hunting men through mountain passes and prairie towns. 3 years of not coming home. 3 years of letting her little sister drift alone into whatever darkness had found her here. She set the Bible aside and continued searching. The wardrobe held a few dresses, simple and worn. In the pocket of one, a handkerchief with embroidered initials, NQ. In another, a small bottle of perfume, nearly empty. Vera uncorked it. Lavender and something else, sweet and fading. Under the bed, nothing but dust. Behind the wardrobe, nothing. She sat back, frustrated. Silas had said Nora kept journals. Where were they? The desk again? She pulled each drawer fully out, checking underneath and behind. Nothing. She ran her hands along the underside of the desktop. Smooth wood, no hidden compartments. The bed frame. She lifted the mattress. Just rope supports. She was about to give up when she noticed the floorboards near the window. One of them sat slightly higher than the others, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. Vera knelt and worked her fingers under the edge. The board lifted easily, as if it had been removed many times before. Beneath it, a small space. And in that space, wrapped in oilcloth, a journal. Vera pulled it out carefully. The journal was leather-bound pages filled with Nora's handwriting. But as she flipped through it, she realized something was wrong. Pages were missing, torn out cleanly, leaving only ragged edges along the binding. She turned to the entries that remained. October 12, 1882. Mr. Merrick gave me a raise today. $10 a month now. He's kind though peculiar. He talks to the dead as if they answer. Sometimes I think perhaps they do. The silence in this town is so complete that any voice even imagined would be welcome. November 3, 1882. Abel Frost came to the office again today. His visits grow more frequent. He brings small gifts, a book of poems, a ribbon for my hair. His wife knows. I see it in her eyes when we pass on the street. I should refuse his attention, but he makes me feel seen in a way I haven't felt since Vera left. Is it wrong to want to be seen? Vera's hands tightened on the journal. December 20th, 1882. I made a terrible mistake. I cannot undo it. If anyone finds out, I will be ruined. Abel promises he will protect me, but I don't know if I can trust his promises. I don't know if I can trust anything anymore except... The entry ended. The next page was torn out. Vera flipped forward. More missing pages. Then another entry. January 30th, 1883. I am with child. The words hit Vera like a physical blow. She read on hands, shaking now. Abel says he will take care of everything. He says the child will want for nothing. But he cannot acknowledge it publicly. His position, his wife, the town. I understand, but understanding doesn't make it easier. I carry this secret like a stone in my chest. More missing pages. Then March 20th, 1883. Beatrice was born today. 6 pounds, dark hair, my eyes. She is perfect. She is everything. Abel came to see her once in secret. He held her for 5 minutes and wept. Then he left, and I haven't seen him since. Miriam sent money through Nell. $100 with a note for the child's care. Nothing more. I should hate her, but I can't. She's being kinder than she has any reason to be. Vera sat back against the wall, the journal open in her lap. Nora had a child, a daughter named Beatrice, and Abel Frost was the father. She forced herself to keep reading. The entries became sporadic, brief notes about Beatrice's growth, worries about money, exhaustion. And then, January 10th, 1884. Beatrice is sick, high fever. Doc Lydell says it's influenza. He's given her medicine, but she's not improving. Abel sent more money. It doesn't help. Money can't save her. Nothing can save her. January 15th, 1884. My daughter died this morning. She was 10 months old. I held her until she stopped breathing. I will never forgive myself for bringing her into this world, for giving her a father who couldn't claim her, for loving a man who couldn't love me back the way I needed. The next entries were brief, barely coherent, grief spilling across pages in broken sentences and trailing thoughts. And then the final entry, March 15th, 1884. I can't live with this anymore. Beatrice deserves better than a mother like me. Abel will take care of her burial. He promised. Silas will understand. Vera, if you ever read this, I'm sorry. Some mistakes can't be forgiven. The gun is loaded. I'm ready. Vera read the last line 3 times. The gun is loaded. I'm ready. Suicide, not murder. Nora had killed herself. But why? Just grief over Beatrice, or something more. She stood, legs unsteady, and moved to the window. She pressed her forehead against the cold glass and closed her eyes. The chill seeped through her skin, but she didn't pull away. No tears came, not yet. Just the hollow ache of 18 months compressed into this single moment. Her sister had lived here, had sat at this desk, had written these words with hands that would soon pull a trigger. Outside, snow continued to fall, silent, relentless, burying everything. Vera stayed there motionless until her breath had fogged the glass white and the lamp behind her burned low. The town slept below. The dead rested in frozen ground. And somewhere between grief and rage she stood alone with the weight of truth she hadn't wanted to find. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Time felt meaningless. Finally she exhaled slowly and opened her eyes. Outside, the town slept under snow. Somewhere out there was Abel Frost. And here in this room, in this journal with its missing pages, were only more questions. Vera looked back at the floorboard still lifted. There might be more hidden there. She knelt again and reached into the space. Her fingers touched something else. Paper. She pulled it out. A ledger. Small, bound in brown leather. She opened it. Inside were names, dates, amounts. Her eyes scanned the entries. Doc Lydell, December 1883, $200. Sheriff Williams, January 1884, $500. Mine Foreman Sykes, February 1884, $100. Bribes. Abel had been paying people off, but for what? She turned to the last page. There, in Nora's handwriting, if anything happens to me, this proves Abel Frost runs Tin Creek through fear and money. He owns the law. He owns the doctors. He owns everything except the truth. And the truth is, Beatrice must never know who her father was. Some truths are more cruel than lies. Vera sat motionless, pieces falling into place. Abel Frost hadn't killed Nora, but he'd created the circumstances that made her death inevitable. The affair, the hidden child, the bribes to keep it secret, the isolation, the shame. She reached into the space one more time. Her hand found something else. Stiff paper. A photograph. She pulled it into the light. The photograph showed Nora smiling in a way Vera hadn't seen in years. Beside her stood a little girl, perhaps a year old, dark curls, bright eyes. On the back, written in Nora's careful script, Beatrice Quinn, 1883. Vera stared at her niece's face, a child she'd never known existed, a child who'd died alone, except for a mother drowning in secrets. Below the photograph was one more item, another journal, smaller, newer. Vera opened it with trembling hands. The first page read, "To whoever finds this, my name is Nora Quinn. This is my confession." Vera's breath caught. She turned the page and began to read, and with each word her certainty crumbled further. "I came to Tin Creek to escape my past. I told everyone I was running from poverty, from lack of opportunity. But that was a lie. I was running from shame. Before Tin Creek, I worked in a brothel in Denver, not as a girl, but as a bookkeeper. I kept records for a madam named Catherine Devereaux. She ran a clean house, treated her girls well. I thought it was honest work, administrative. I told myself I wasn't part of what happened in the rooms upstairs, but I was. I kept 2 sets of books, one for the law, one for Catherine. The real books showed bribes to police, payments to politicians, blackmail arrangements. I knew every secret, every client, every crime. When Catherine was murdered by a client who didn't want his name on any ledger, I took the real books and ran. I changed my name, came west, became the woman who arrived in Tin Creek looking for redemption. I met Abel Frost within a week. He was kind to me. He gave me work when Silas's previous clerk left. He listened when I spoke. I let myself believe I could start over, be someone new. But you can't outrun yourself. I brought my past with me like disease. Abel and I became close. I told myself it was love. Maybe it was for a while, but I was using him the same way I'd used everyone. For protection, for money, for the illusion of safety. When I discovered I was pregnant, I saw an opportunity. I could secure my future through this child. Abel would have to support me. Even in secret, I would have security. But Beatrice? Beatrice was real. More real than anything in my life had ever been. When she was born, everything changed. I loved her, purely, without calculation. And that terrified me. Because I knew what I'd done. I'd brought an innocent child into a life built on lies. Into a town where her father couldn't claim her. Into a world where she'd grow up as a secret, a shame, a mistake. When she got sick, I prayed. For the first time in my life, I prayed. I begged God to save her and punish me instead. He took her anyway, and I understood. This was justice. Beatrice died because of me, because of what I was, what I'd always been. I can't live knowing that. I can't live knowing she suffered for my sins. So I'm making one last decision that's actually mine. Not calculated, not manipulative, just final. Vera, if you're reading this, know that I love you. I always did. You left because you saw what I was becoming and couldn't watch. I don't blame you for that. I blame myself for everything. Tell Abel I'm sorry. Tell Silas I'm grateful. Tell Miriam she was kinder than I deserved. And forgive me if you can. Though I know I don't deserve that either. The journal ended there. Vera sat in the lamplight, Nora's words burning in her mind. Her sister hadn't been murdered. She'd been destroyed by her own guilt, her own past, her own inability to forgive herself. There was no villain to hunt, no justice to extract. Only the cold truth that some people kill themselves slowly through shame and secrets, and by the time you realize what's happening, they're already gone. Vera looked at the photograph of Beatrice again, a child who died not knowing she was loved by anyone except a mother who believed she didn't deserve to love anyone. Outside, the wind picked up. Snow tapped against the window like fingers asking to be let in. Vera gathered the journals, the ledger, the photograph, and carefully placed them back under the floorboard. She lowered the board into place and stood. Her reflection stared back at her from the dark window. Behind it, the ghost of this room. Behind that, the ghost of her sister. She'd come to Tin Creek for revenge. She'd found only grief. But something still didn't fit. The ledger, the bribes, Abel's control over the town, Nora's final note about truth being more cruel than lies. There were more secrets here, more layers beneath the surface. And tomorrow Vera would start digging again. Because if Nora had taught her anything, it was that the truth, no matter how painful, deserved to be found, even if it destroyed everything in its path. Morning came gray and reluctant. the kind of dawn that barely qualified as light. Vera woke to the sound of hammering from the workshop below. She'd slept poorly, dreams filled with Nora's face and a child she'd never met crying in rooms that stretched into darkness. She dressed quickly and descended the stairs. The house was cold despite the stove burning in the front room. Everything in Silas Merrick's world existed at a temperature just above freezing, as if warmth itself was an indulgence he couldn't afford. She found him in the workshop, bent over a small coffin. The wood was fresh pine, still pale and raw. His hands moved with practiced precision, fitting joints, testing angles. He worked in silence, the only sound, the tap of hammer on nail. He didn't look up when she entered, but his voice came quiet and sure. "You didn't sleep well," he said. It wasn't a question. "How did you know? I heard you walking." The floorboards in Nora's room creak in specific places. "I know the pattern of someone who can't settle." Vera moved closer. The coffin was small, too small. "Who is this for?" "Stillborn child. Miner's wife, third pregnancy. The baby came early, lived less than an hour." Silas set down his hammer and finally looked at her. His eyes were tired, ancient despite his age. "I build a lot of these, more every year. The town is dying, but children still try to be born into it." A long silence stretched between them. Outside, wind rattled the windows. Vera pulled the journals from her coat pocket and set them on the workbench. "I found these," she said, "under the floorboard in Nora's room." Silas stared at them, but didn't touch them, as if they might burn his fingers. "I know," he said quietly. "You knew they were there, yes. And you let me find them." "Yes." Vera felt anger rising hot and sharp. Why, she demanded, why not just tell me what happened? Why this game? Silas picked up a piece of sandpaper and began smoothing the edge of the coffin lid. His movements were slow, deliberate, buying time to find words. "Because the truth isn't mine to give," he said finally. "It was Nora's. And she wanted you to discover it yourself, to see her as she really was, not as I might describe her. You talked to her before she died. Every day." He paused, the sandpaper stilling in his hand. "The morning she did it, she came down to the workshop. It was early, barely light. She stood where you're standing now, and she said, 'If my sister ever comes looking, help her find the truth. But don't hand it to her. Let her dig. She needs to dig. It's the only way she'll believe it.'" Vera's throat tightened. "That sounds like Nora." Silas nodded. "She knew you better than you thought she did. I read the journals," Vera said. "All of them. About Abel. About Beatrice. About everything. Then you know she wasn't murdered. I know what she wrote, but I also know what people write isn't always the whole truth." Silas set down the sandpaper and turned to face her fully. His expression was unreadable, a mask worn so long it had become his actual face. "What do you want from me, Miss Quinn?" The name hit like a slap. She hadn't told him her real name. "You knew," she whispered. "From the moment you stepped off that stage," Silas replied, "you have Nora's walk. The same way of holding your shoulders when you're trying not to show fear. I've spent 18 months talking to her ghost. I know every gesture, every mannerism. You're her sister. You came for revenge. And now you've found there's no one to take revenge against except grief itself." Vera felt something crack inside her chest. The anger drained away, leaving only exhaustion. "I don't know what to do now," she admitted. The words came out smaller than she intended. Silas picked up the journals and held them carefully, as if they were made of something more fragile than paper. "Then let me help you finish what you started," he said. "There are still people in this town who need to tell you their truths. And there's something else, something Nora left behind that you haven't found yet." "What? A manuscript?" "She was writing a book about Tin Creek, about all of us, about herself. She finished it 2 days before she died. Where is it? Safe. Hidden, waiting for you to decide what to do with it." "Why would I decide? You're the executor of her estate." Silas shook his head. "I'm the keeper of her body. You're the keeper of her memory." Only you can choose whether that memory should be made public or buried with her." Before Vera could respond, the shop bell rang. Someone had entered the front room. Silas moved toward the door, then paused. "That will be Nell Pritchard," he said. "The woman from the funeral. She's been wanting to talk to you." The woman who sat across from Vera in Silas's front room was compact and watchful, her fingers working needles in continuous motion. Yarn appeared from her bag and disappeared into growing fabric, the rhythm never breaking, creating something without apparent shape or purpose. Nell Pritchard had the kind of face that revealed nothing until it revealed everything. Lines around her eyes from squinting into too many hard winds, scars on her forearms visible when her sleeves wrote up old burns that had healed white and twisted. "You're Nora's sister," Nell said. Not a question. Statement of fact delivered without preamble. Vera didn't deny it. "Yes, thought so." "You got her eyes." She paused in her knitting just long enough to meet Vera's gaze. Sad eyes that pretend they're not. "You knew Nora, best as anyone could know her, which wasn't very well." Nora kept herself locked up tight. The needles resumed their clicking. "But she talked to me sometimes. When she needed someone who wouldn't judge." "What did she tell you?" Nell was quiet for a moment, considering. About Abel. About the baby. About how she'd come here running from something and ended up running straight into something worse. "The baby," Vera said carefully. "Beatrice. Sweet child. Dark hair, big eyes. Used to bring her into the store sometimes when she needed supplies. Nora would hold her so tight, like she was afraid someone would steal her if she let go. Abel never claimed her. Abel never claimed anything that might cost him something." Nell's voice carried an edge now. "He's a careful man, calculating. He gives the appearance of generosity while making sure everything serves his interests. You don't like him. I don't trust him. There's a difference." The knitting needles paused again. "Abel Frost isn't evil. He's just weak, and weak men do terrible things when they're trying to look strong." "Did he hurt Nora?" Nell considered the question. "Not with his hands. But there are other ways to hurt people. He made her promises he couldn't keep. Let her believe in futures that didn't exist. When Beatrice was born, Nora thought maybe he'd finally choose her. Instead, he chose his reputation, his wife, his position. What about Miriam? What did she know? Everything." Nell's needles started moving again, faster now. "Miriam Frost isn't blind. She knew about the affair from the first day Abel looked at Nora with anything more than employer's courtesy. And she allowed it. Allowed isn't the right word. Endured, maybe. Accepted. Miriam can't have children. Medical condition years back. She made peace with her husband, finding comfort elsewhere long as it stayed quiet. That must have hurt. Probably. But Miriam doesn't show pain. She's got pride like armor. Nothing gets through." Vera leaned forward. "The journals mentioned you sent things for Beatrice. Medicine, clothes?" Nell's hands stilled completely. She looked up, and for the first time, her face showed something raw. "Miriam sent the money," Nell said quietly. "I was just the messenger. Every month envelope would appear under my door. Cash, no note. I'd buy what Beatrice needed and take it to Nora. We never spoke about where it came from, didn't need to. Why would Miriam help? Because she's not a monster. She's a woman in an impossible situation, making the best of it she could. She couldn't save her marriage, couldn't have her own children, couldn't stop her husband from loving someone else. But she could make sure an innocent child didn't suffer for adult mistakes." The picture Nell painted was more complex than Vera had expected. Not villains and victims, but damaged people navigating damage they'd all helped create. When Beatrice died, Vera said what happened. Nell's face closed down. "That's not my story to tell. Talk to Abel. Talk to Doc Lydell. They were there at the end. And after. When Nora decided she couldn't live with herself anymore, Nell set down her knitting entirely now, hands folding in her lap. "I saw her the day before. She came to the store, asked for bullets. I sold them to her. I knew. God help me, I knew what she was planning, and I sold her the bullets anyway. Why? Because she asked me to, because she looked at me with those eyes, your eyes, and said, please don't make me beg. What was I supposed to do? Lock her up? Tell Silas? Tell Abel? Everyone had already failed her. I wasn't going to fail her again by taking away her last choice. Tears were running down Nell's face now, silent and steady. She didn't wipe them away. I dream about it sometimes, she continued, handing her that box of bullets, watching her walk out into the snow, knowing I'd just helped her die. And the worst part is, I still think I did the right thing. She'd lost everything. We'd all taken pieces of her until there was nothing left. The least I could do was let her go with dignity. Vera felt the weight of it settling over the room. Complicity. Everyone in this town had played a part. Not through malice, but through silence, through weakness, through the slow accumulation of small cruelties that eventually crushed a woman under their combined weight. Thank you for telling me, Vera said. Nell picked up her knitting again. The needles resumed their rhythm, click, 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 endless and mechanical. I didn't do it for you, she said. I did it for Nora. She deserves to have her story known, even if it makes the rest of us look like the cowards we were. The mine sat on the eastern edge of town, a wound in the hillside that had been bleeding wealth and men for 30 years. The entrance was a dark mouth framed by timber supports rails disappearing into blackness. Piles of tailings spread across the snow like infection. Vera approached in late afternoon when most of the miners would be underground and the surface operations ran with skeleton crews. She'd watched the patterns for 2 days, learning the rhythms. Abel Frost came to the mine office every day at 4 o'clock, stayed for an hour reviewing paperwork, then returned home for dinner. Today she would confront him. The office was a small building near the mine entrance wood frame construction with windows facing the workyard. Vera could see Abel inside, bent over a desk, covered with ledgers. She knocked once and entered without waiting for invitation. Abel looked up, surprise crossing his face before being replaced with careful neutrality. "Miss Webb," he said. "This is unexpected." Vera closed the door behind her. "My name isn't Webb. It's Quinn. Vera Quinn." Understanding dawned slowly in Abel's eyes, then something that might have been resignation. "Nora's sister," he said quietly. "I wondered if you'd come. You knew about me. She spoke of you often. Her older sister who'd gone to Montana hunting bad men for money. She was proud of you, and angry that you'd left her." "I had my reasons, we all do." Abel gestured to a chair. "Sit, please. If we're going to have this conversation, we should do it properly." Vera remained standing. "I read Nora's journals, all of them." "Yes, then you know I'm responsible for her death." The admission came so quickly, so simply, that Vera was thrown off balance. She'd expected denials, justifications, anger, not immediate acceptance of guilt. "You don't deny it," she said. "Why would I?" Abel set down his pen and leaned back in his chair. He looked older than he had at the funeral, the lamplight catching shadows under his eyes. "I've been denying it to myself for 18 months. I'm tired of lying. You had an affair with my sister." "Yes." "Got her pregnant." "Yes." "Refused to claim the child." Abel's jaw tightened. "Yes." "And when the child died, Nora killed herself because of it." A long silence. Then Abel spoke, his voice rough. "That's the simple version. The true version is more complicated. Explain it to me then." Abel stood and moved to the window, looking out at the mine entrance. Men were emerging from their shift, covered in rock dust, moving with the exhausted shuffle of bodies pushed past endurance. "I met Nora 3 years ago," he said. "She'd just arrived in Tin Creek looking for work. Silas hired her as his clerk. I noticed her immediately. She was beautiful, yes, but more than that. She was alive in a way no one else here was. This town was dying even then, and she was this bright thing that had somehow wandered into our cemetery." He paused, collecting his thoughts. "I was lonely. My marriage to Miriam had become an arrangement of mutual convenience years before. We cared for each other, but love had dried up. No children, no passion, just two people sharing a house and pretending that was enough. So you used Nora? No. Abel's voice sharpened. I loved her. Genuinely, desperately, stupidly loved her. And she loved me, or at least she loved who I was when I was with her. For 6 months we had something real. Then she got pregnant. And reality came back. Abel turned from the window. I wanted to leave Miriam. I wanted to claim Beatrice, raise her properly, damn the consequences. But Nora wouldn't let me. Vera felt her certainty wavering. What do you mean? Abel moved back to his desk and unlocked a drawer. He pulled out a bundle of letters and handed them to Vera. Read these, he said. They're from Nora, written during her pregnancy. Vera opened the first letter. Nora's handwriting covered the page. Dearest Abel, I know you want to leave Miriam for me. Please don't. Not yet. Your position in this town is the only thing keeping the mine running, keeping people employed. If you divorce Miriam in scandal, the investors will pull out. The mine will close. Hundreds of people will lose their livelihoods. I can't be responsible for that. We'll find another way. The next letter, dated 2 months later. Abel. I've been thinking about Beatrice's future. If you claim her openly, she'll grow up as the bastard child who destroyed your marriage. Children will mock her. Women will shun her. Is that better than being secretly cared for? Maybe anonymity is kinder than legitimacy bought with shame. Vera set the letters down. She was talking you out of it. Every time I worked up the courage to leave Miriam, Nora would write another letter explaining why I shouldn't. Abel's voice cracked. She was protecting me from my own conscience, making it easy for me to be a coward by framing it as the noble choice. Why? Because that's who Nora was. Abel sat heavily in his chair. She sacrificed herself for others, even when those others didn't deserve it. She convinced herself that my reputation mattered more than her happiness, that Beatrice was better off hidden than claimed that her own suffering was an acceptable price for keeping the peace. And you let her. Yes, God help me, yes. I let her make those arguments because they gave me permission to do what I wanted anyway. Stay comfortable. Stay respectable. Keep my position and my marriage and have Nora on the side. I was weak, Miss Quinn. I am weak. And Nora paid the price for my weakness. What about Beatrice's death? Abel's face crumpled. When Beatrice got sick, I paid for everything. Best medicine all of Doc Lydell's time, anything Nora needed. But influenza doesn't care about money. Beatrice died anyway. And Nora. His voice broke. Nora looked at me at the funeral and said, "This is what we get for hiding love. It dies in the dark." Vera felt anger and pity warring inside her. This was the man she'd come to destroy. But he wasn't a monster. He was just a coward. And cowardice had killed Nora as surely as any bullet. The bribe, she said, changing tack. The ledger showed you paying off officials. Abel nodded. After Beatrice was born, I needed to make sure no records existed that could tie the child to me. Birth certificate lists father as unknown. I paid the clerk to keep it that way. Paid Doc Lydell to keep quiet about treating Beatrice. Paid the sheriff to ignore any questions. He looked at Vera directly. I wasn't covering up a crime. I was covering up shame. My shame. Vera stood abruptly. I should hate you. You should. Abel agreed. I hate myself enough for both of us. But I don't. Vera's voice was bitter. Because you're just sad. You're not evil. You're not cruel. You're just pathetic. And Nora died because of someone too pathetic to fight for her. Yes, Abel said simply. That's exactly right. Vera moved toward the door, then stopped. One more question. Anything. Do you still love her? Abel was quiet for a long moment. Then every single day. I talk to her in my head. I visit her grave. I wear a piece of Beatrice's hair in my pocket watch. He pulled out the watch and opened it. Inside a tiny curl of dark baby hair. This is all I have left of the only honest thing I ever felt. Vera left without another word. She walked through the darkening town snow crunching under her boots. The wind had picked up, carrying the promise of heavier weather. Around her, Tin Creek settled into evening. Lights appearing in windows, smoke rising from chimneys, the sounds of life continuing despite everything. She found herself at the cemetery. It sat on a low hill at the western edge of town, surrounded by an iron fence that was slowly rusting away. Headstones jutted from snow at odd angles, the ground beneath them shifting as the earth froze and thawed through the seasons. Vera found Nora's grave easily. Fresh flowers sat in front of it, placed recently despite the cold. The headstone was simple granite words carved clean and deep. Nora Quinn, 1859 to 1884. Beloved daughter, sister, mother, rest in peace. Beside it, a smaller stone. Beatrice Quinn, 1883 to 1884. Too brief, too bright. Vera knelt in the snow. She didn't pray. She didn't cry. She simply stayed there, one hand on each stone, feeling the cold granite through her gloves. The cemetery was silent except for wind moving through bare trees. No birds, no voices, just Vera and the dead. She thought about Nora's journals, about Abel's weakness, about Miriam's silent help, about Nell selling bullets and living with that choice. Everyone in this town carried pieces of Nora's death, and none of them had meant to kill her. They just failed to save her one small failure at a time until the weight became unbearable. Vera removed one glove and pressed her bare hand against Nora's headstone. The cold bit immediately, but she held it there. "I'm sorry I left you," she whispered. "I'm sorry I wasn't here. I'm sorry for everything." The wind answered, nothing else. She stayed there as darkness fell completely, as the temperature dropped further, as the first stars appeared through breaks in the clouds. She stayed until her hand went numb and her knees ached, and the cold had seeped into her bones. Finally she stood. She looked at the graves one last time. "I'll find out the rest," she said quietly. "All of it, every secret, every lie, every piece of truth you hid. And then I'll decide what to do with it." She turned and walked back toward town, leaving the dead behind. The next morning, Vera found Owen Hadley at the mine entrance, preparing to descend with the early shift. He was young, younger than she'd realized at the funeral, 19, maybe 20, with a kind of face that hadn't yet learned to hide what it felt. She called his name. He turned, saw her, and something like fear crossed his expression. "I need to talk to you," Vera said, "about Nora Quinn." Owen's face went pale. "I don't know anything. You knew her." "Everyone knew Miss Quinn." "No," Vera stepped closer. "You knew her. You were in love with her." Owen looked around desperately, but the other miners had already descended. They were alone in the gray morning light. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, but his voice shook. Vera pulled out the photograph of Nora and Beatrice. She held it up. "Look at this child," she said. "Really look at her." Owen's eyes went to the photograph and immediately filled with tears. "I can't," he whispered. "Look at her eyes." Vera continued relentlessly. "Look at the shape of her face. Who does she look like?" Owen broke. The words came out in a rush, a confession he'd been holding for too long. "Me. She looks like me. She had my eyes, my mother's chin, my grandfather's dark hair," Nora told me. "The day before she died, she told me Beatrice was mine." Vera felt the ground shift beneath her. "What?" Owen sank onto a pile of lumberhead in his hands. He was sobbing now, the harsh gasps of a young man who'd carried impossible weight alone. "I loved Nora from the first day I saw her," he said through tears. "I was 17. She was kind to me. She talked to me like I mattered, like I was more than just another miner's son. I wrote her poems. Stupid, terrible poems. She never laughed at them. Did you? We were together once, just once. It was 2 years ago, spring of '82. I'd been hurt in a cave and nothing serious, but Doc Lydell was drunk, and Nora helped clean my wounds. Afterward, He couldn't finish the sentence. It was just that one time. Then she started working for Mr. Frost, and everything changed. She didn't tell you about the baby, not until it was too late." Owen wiped his face with dirty hands, leaving streaks of rock dust. "When Beatrice was born, I heard about it. Everyone knew Nora had a baby. Everyone assumed it was Mr. Frost's because of the affair. I thought so too. I never imagined. What did Nora tell you? The day before she died, she came to me after my shift. She looked. He paused, searching for words, like she'd already decided, like she was saying goodbye. She said, "Owen, I need to tell you something. Beatrice had your eyes. She was yours. I'm sorry I never told you. I'm sorry for everything." What did you do? I begged her to let me help. I had $40 saved. I said we could leave, go to California, start over. I'd claim Beatrice's memory, tell everyone she was mine, give her the dignity of being claimed. But Nora just shook her head and said, "Beatrice is gone. Nothing can bring her back. And I can't live knowing I lied to everyone, including you. I told Abel she was his. I let him love a child that wasn't his. I used him. I used you. I used everyone. I don't deserve to keep living." You didn't stop her. How could I? Owen looked up at Vera, his young face aged by grief. She'd already decided. I could see it. And part of me, God forgive me, part of me was angry. She'd kept my daughter from me, let me be nothing, while Abel Frost played father in secret. By the time I knew the truth, Beatrice was already dead and buried. Why didn't you tell anyone after? Who would believe me? I'm nobody. Just a kid who works in the mines and writes bad poetry. Mr. Frost has money, power, position. If I'd claimed Beatrice was mine, everyone would think I was lying to cause trouble. Vera's expression must have shown something, because Owen added quickly, and Nora asked me not to. Her last words to me were, "Let them think what they think. Let me be remembered as someone better than I was. Please." So you kept silent for 18 months. Owen stood wiping his face again. Every day I go down in that mine, and every day I think, maybe today I'll just stay down there, not come back up, be with my daughter wherever she is. Vera felt a crushing wave of pity. You're Beatrice's father. You have a right to claim her. What good would it do now? She's dead. Nora's dead. The only thing claiming her would accomplish is making Mr. Frost and Mrs. Frost look like fools. And they were kind to Beatrice in their way. Mrs. Frost sent money. Mr. Frost paid for the funeral. They loved her even if she wasn't his. They loved a lie. Maybe, but it was a lie that gave Beatrice a better life than I could have. Owen met Vera's eyes. I was 17 when she was conceived. I had nothing. Mr. Frost gave Nora money, medicine, security. Would Beatrice have been better off with a teenage father working for pennies? Would Nora? Vera had no answer. Owen turned to leave, then paused. "Miss Quinn, there's something else you should know." "What?" "The day Nora died, after she talked to me, she went to Silas Merrick. I saw her go into his shop. She was carrying papers, a lot of papers. When she came out an hour later, she wasn't carrying anything. I think she gave something to Silas. Something important." Vera felt pieces clicking into place. "Thank you." Owen descended into the mine without looking back, swallowed by darkness. Vera returned to Silas's house as afternoon light began to fail. She found him in the front room, sitting at his desk, surrounded by ledgers and death certificates. The paperwork of endings. "You knew," she said without preamble. "You knew Beatrice was Owen's child, not Abel's." Silas didn't look up from his work. "Yes, Nora told you. The day before she died, she came here and confessed everything, her past in Denver, the brothel ledgers, using Abel, lying about Beatrice's father, all of it." He finally looked up and his face was infinitely sad. She said she couldn't bear the guilt anymore, that she'd hurt everyone who'd ever tried to love her, that Beatrice's death was punishment for her sins. "What did you tell her?" Silas stood and moved to a cabinet in the corner. He unlocked it with a key from his pocket and withdrew a thick stack of papers bound with string. "I told her she wasn't responsible for an infant's death," he said. "I told her influenza takes children regardless of their parents' mistakes. I told her she deserved forgiveness, even if she couldn't forgive herself." "Did it help?" "No." Silas held out the papers. "This is what she gave me before she left. She'd been writing it for months. A full account of her life, her choices, her regrets. She called it her confession and her apology." Vera took the manuscript. The first page read in Nora's careful handwriting, "Tin Creek, a true account, by Nora Quinn. She wanted this published, Silas said, after she died. She wanted the truth known, all of it, no matter who it hurt. But she also said, he paused, she said, if you came looking for her, I should give it to you, and you should decide, because she trusted your judgment more than her own. Vera flipped through the pages. Hundreds of them. Nora's whole story written with unflinching honesty. Her work in the brothel, her affair with Abel, her night with Owen, her lies about Beatrice's paternity, her manipulation of everyone who tried to help her, and underneath it all, her desperate desire to be better than she was, to be worthy of the love people kept offering, despite her unworthiness. The last page was dated March 14, 1884, the day before Nora died. If you're reading this, I'm gone. I don't ask for forgiveness because I don't deserve it. I don't ask to be remembered kindly because my life was built on deceptions. I only ask that the truth be known, that Beatrice be remembered as Owen Hadley's daughter, that Abel and Miriam be freed from the lie I forced them to live, that this town understand what secrets cost. Vera, if you're the one reading this, know that I love you. You were always the brave one, the honest one. Do with this truth what you think is right. I trust you to make the choice I couldn't. Vera closed the manuscript. Her hands were shaking. What happens now? Silas asked quietly. I don't know, Vera admitted. If I publish this, it destroys everyone. Abel looks like a fool. Miriam looks like a victim. Owen's privacy is violated. The whole town's secrets are exposed. And if you don't, then Nora's voice is silenced. Her truth dies with her. Everything she wanted to confess remains hidden. Silas moved to the window, looking out at the darkening street. There's a third option, he said. What? Keep it. Preserve it. Let people choose whether to know or not. Don't force the truth on anyone, but don't bury it either. Make it available for those who want to understand, who need to know. Let Nora's words exist without weaponizing them. Vera looked at the manuscript in her hands, her sister's final testimony, her last attempt at honesty. I need time to think, she said. Of course, Silas turned from the window. But while you're thinking, you should know something else. What? Miriam Frost has been waiting to talk to you. She's been coming by every day asking if you're ready. I've been telling her no, but I think perhaps you should hear what she has to say. Why? Because Miriam knew everything too. And unlike the rest of us, she made a choice that Nora never knew about, and a choice that might change how you see all of this. What choice? That's Miriam's to tell, Silas said. Not mine. The sun had set completely now. Outside, Tin Creek settled into another cold night. Somewhere in this town, people were having dinner, tending fires, preparing for bed. Living lives built on foundations of secrets and silence. And in Silas Merrick's front room, Vera Quinn sat with her sister's confession in her hands, trying to decide if truth was always worth the destruction it caused. The question had no easy answer. It never did. 3 days passed before Vera agreed to meet Miriam Frost. 3 days of sitting in Nora's room with the manuscript, reading and rereading her sister's words until they blurred together into a single long confession that had no beginning and no end. 3 days of walking through Tin Creek's frozen streets, watching people go about their lives, wondering how many of them carried secrets that would shatter if spoken aloud. On the 4th day, Miriam came to Silas's house just after dawn. Vera heard the knock and knew immediately who it was. Something about the rhythm of it. Not hesitant like Owen's, would be not businesslike like Abel's, not friendly like Nell's. Precise, controlled. A knock that demanded attention without raising its voice. She opened the door. Miriam Frost stood on the porch dressed in dark blue wool, her hair pinned with the same severe elegance she'd worn at the funeral. Without the veil, her face was even more striking. Beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with softness. All angles and discipline and eyes that had seen too much to be surprised by anything. Miss Quinn, Miriam said, "May I come in?" Vera stepped aside. They sat in Silas's front room, the space between them charged with unspoken things. Morning light filtered through frost-covered windows, turning everything pale and uncertain. Miriam removed her gloves, slowly folding them with precise movements, buying time. "You've read Nora's manuscript," Miriam said. Not a question. Yes. "And you're trying to decide what to do with it." Yes. Miriam nodded once, as if confirming something she'd already known. "Before you decide, there are things you should hear from me, things Nora didn't know, things that might change your understanding of what happened." "I'm listening." Miriam was quiet for a long moment, gathering her thoughts. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady, but carried an undertone of something raw. "I knew about Abel's affair with Nora from the first week," she said. "He came home smelling of lavender. Nora wore lavender water. It wasn't difficult to deduce. That must have hurt." It did. Miriam's hands tightened slightly on the folded gloves. "But our marriage had been dead for years before Nora arrived. We stayed together out of habit, out of social expectation, out of the simple fact that divorce would ruin both of us. I'd made peace with a loveless life, or I thought I had." "What changed?" "Beatrice." Miriam's voice softened almost imperceptibly. "When Abel told me Nora was pregnant, I expected to feel rage, betrayal. Instead I felt—" She paused, searching for the word. "Hope. Hope. I can't have children, Miss Quinn. Medical condition from a fever when I was 16. My womb is scarred beyond function. It's been the great grief of my life. When I married Abel, I thought perhaps I could find purpose in being a good wife, a pillar of the community. But without children, without love, I was just empty. And Beatrice filled that emptiness." "No." Miriam looked directly at Vera now. "Beatrice gave me something to hope for. A child connected to my husband, even if not to me. A legacy that might redeem our failed marriage. I know how that sounds, pathetic, desperate. But it's the truth. You sent money, every month, through Nell. Clothes, medicine, food, toys. Everything Beatrice needed." Miriam's voice gained strength. "I never held her, never met her. But I loved her from a distance. I studied the few photographs Abel kept hidden in his office. I memorized her face. I dreamed about a future where, perhaps when she was older, I might be allowed into her life as an aunt, a family friend, something. Did Nora know? That I was sending money, yes. That I knew about the affair, I believe so. That I loved Beatrice." Miriam shook her head. "No. Nora thought I was being charitable out of guilt or pity. She never understood that I was grateful to her. Grateful. For giving my husband something to love again. For bringing a child into the world that shared his blood. For letting me even indirectly participate in motherhood." Miriam's composure cracked slightly. "I know how twisted that sounds, but grief makes us twisted, Miss Quinn. Loss shapes us into strange forms." Vera felt her anger at Miriam dissolving, replaced by something more complicated. This wasn't the cold, calculating wife she'd imagined. This was a woman who'd turned her pain into something almost generous, however warped. "When Beatrice died," Miriam continued, "I grieved as deeply as Abel. Deeper, perhaps, because I had to hide it. I couldn't attend the funeral. Couldn't send flowers under my own name. Couldn't acknowledge that I'd lost something precious. I could only sit in my parlor and pretend nothing had changed while my heart broke. And Nora. I wanted to help her. I sent more money enough that she could leave Tin Creek, start over somewhere new, but she returned it, all of it, with a note that said, 'I don't deserve kindness, especially not yours.'" Miriam stood and moved to the window, her back to Vera. "2 days before Nora died, she came to my house. Abel was at the mine. We were alone. She told me everything, about her past in Denver, about the brothel ledgers, about lying to Abel regarding Beatrice's paternity." Vera's breath caught. "She told you Beatrice was Owen's?" "Yes." "And she apologized. To me? Can you imagine?" Miriam's voice trembled. "She stood in my parlor and apologized for deceiving my husband, for taking money under false pretenses, for allowing me to love a child who had no connection to Abel or me whatsoever." "What did you say?" "I told her it didn't matter, that biology meant nothing, that Beatrice had been loved, and love was what made a family, not blood. I told her she could still leave, still start over, still choose life. She didn't listen. She said, "I'm tired of being forgiven for things I don't deserve forgiveness for. I'm tired of people being kind when I've only ever used their kindness. I'm tired of living as a lie." Miriam turned back to Vera. And then she asked me something. What? She asked if I would preserve her manuscript. Make sure it was given to you if you ever came looking. She said you were the only person strong enough to decide what should be done with the truth. Why didn't you keep it then? Because Nora specified it should go to Silas first. She wanted you to find it through investigation, not have it handed to you. She said you needed to dig because that's who you are, someone who unearths things. Vera absorbed this. So you've known about the manuscript all along. I've known everything all along, Miss Quinn. Miriam returned to her seat. I know what my husband did. I know what Nora did. I know what Owen doesn't have the courage to claim. I know what this entire town has been hiding. And I know that you're trying to decide whether to destroy us all with the truth or let us continue living our lies. What do you think I should do? Miriam met Vera's eyes. I think you should ask yourself what Nora actually wanted. Not what she said she wanted, but what she truly needed. What's the difference? Nora said she wanted the truth published, but what she needed was to be understood, to be seen as fully human, flawed and struggling and ultimately broken by her own guilt. She didn't need the world to know her story. She needed you to know it, to understand why she made the choices she made, to forgive her even if she couldn't forgive herself. You think I should bury it. I think you should honor your sister by making the choice she was too wounded to make. Miriam stood. I've said what I came to say. The rest is yours to decide. She moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing, Miss Quinn. Yes, if you publish that manuscript, it will destroy Abel. He'll lose everything. His reputation, his business, his standing in what's left of this community. And he deserves that destruction. But it won't bring Nora back. It won't ease your grief. It will only create more pain. Is that a threat? No. Miriam's smile was sad and small. It's a warning from someone who knows what it costs to choose revenge over peace. I chose peace. I let my husband love another woman. I helped raise her child from the shadows. I swallowed my pride and my pain and my rage because I thought that was what strength looked like. And maybe I was right. Or maybe I was just a coward. You'll have to decide which. She left without waiting for a response. Vera sat alone in the quiet house, Miriam's words echoing. The manuscript lay on the table where she'd left it, Nora's confession waiting for judgment. For the first time since arriving in Tin Creek, Vera wasn't sure what justice looked like anymore. The next 2 days became a pilgrimage of sorts. Vera went to each person whose life intersected with Nora's story and asked them the same question. If I publish this manuscript, what happens to you? She found Abel at the mine office. He listened to her question and answered without hesitation. I'll be ruined, he said. The investors will pull out. The mine will close. 300 men will lose their jobs in a town that has no other employment. My name will become synonymous with cowardice and deception. I'll deserve every bit of it. And what would you want me to do? Whatever helps you sleep at night, Miss Quinn. I stopped sleeping well 18 months ago. I don't expect that to change regardless of what you choose. She found Owen preparing to descend into the mine. He looked at her with eyes that had aged years and days. If you publish it, people will know Beatrice was mine, he said. They'll know I loved Nora. They'll know I failed her. Maybe that's what should happen. Maybe I should be known for what I am. A boy who loved a woman and lost a daughter and wasn't man enough to save either of them. Do you want that? No. But I don't deserve to want things. I gave up that right when I let Nora walk away with a box of bullets and didn't stop her. She found Doc Lydell at his office sober for once, or trying to be. His hands shook as he poured coffee. The manuscript mentions the bribes, he said. It'll prove I falsified records, took money to stay quiet. I'll lose my license, probably face criminal charges. At my age, that's a death sentence. Do you regret what you did? Every goddamn day. But regret doesn't undo the past. It just makes the present harder to bear. She found Nell in the general store knitting, as always, the needles moving in their endless rhythm. If you publish it, nothing changes for me, Nell said. Everyone already knows I sold Nora the bullets. I carry that. I'll carry it until I die. Words on paper won't make it heavier, but it would expose the whole town. This town is already exposed, Miss Quinn. We're a dying place, full of dying people, holding on to dying secrets. Maybe being forced to speak truth would kill us faster. Maybe it would set us free. I honestly don't know anymore. What would Nora want? Nell's needles paused. Nora wanted to be remembered as better than she was, but she also wanted to be known as she actually was. Those two wants can't coexist. You'll have to choose which version of your sister lives on. Finally, Vera returned to Silas. She found him in the workshop building another small coffin. Always another small coffin. "What do you think I should do?" she asked. Silas set down his tools and looked at her with those ancient, tired eyes. "I think you should stop asking other people," he said. "This isn't their choice. It's yours. Nora gave you that burden specifically. She trusted you to carry it. I don't know if I'm strong enough. You are. You tracked your sister across 3 territories. You infiltrated a town under false identity. You've confronted every person involved in her death without flinching. You're stronger than anyone Nora ever knew, including herself. That doesn't mean I know the right answer. There is no right answer, Miss Quinn. There's only the answer you can live with." That night, Vera sat alone in Nora's room. The manuscript lay open on the desk. She'd read it so many times she'd memorized passages. Her sister's voice filled her head, urgent and desperate and heartbreakingly honest. She lit the lamp and began reading aloud, speaking Nora's words into the empty room as if her sister could hear, as if confession could reach across the barrier between living and dead. "My name is Nora Quinn. This is my confession." Her voice cracked, but she continued. "I came to Tin Creek to escape my past, but you can't outrun yourself. I brought my shame with me like a disease." The words poured out. All of Nora's mistakes, her manipulations, her desperate attempts to be better than she was, her love for Beatrice, her guilt over using Abel, her sorrow at hiding Owen's fatherhood, her exhaustion with her own inability to be the person everyone thought she was. Vera read until her voice grew hoarse. She read until tears blurred the words. She read until the lamp burned low and the room grew cold. When she finished, she sat in silence. Then she whispered into the darkness, "I forgive you." The words felt strange in her mouth, inadequate, but also necessary. "I forgive you for leaving, for lying, for being human and flawed and broken. I forgive you for not being perfect, for not being the sister I wanted you to be. I forgive you." Something loosened in Vera's chest. The tight knot of anger and grief that had lived there for 18 months began to unravel. She stood and moved to the window. Outside, Tin Creek slept under stars. A dying town full of damaged people, all of them carrying secrets, all of them trying to survive their own failures. Vera made her decision. The town meeting was held in the church on a Sunday afternoon. Silas had spread the word. Anyone who'd known Nora Quinn was invited to attend. No agenda announced, just a gathering. 30 people came, more than Vera expected. They filled the front pews, watching her with curiosity and apprehension. Abel and Miriam sat together in the second row, their faces carefully neutral. Owen stood near the back cap in hands. Doc Lydell sat alone, a flask visible in his coat pocket. Nell occupied a middle pew, knitting needles already moving. Vera stood at the front, the manuscript in her hands. Her voice when she spoke was clear and steady. "My name is Vera Quinn. I'm Nora Quinn's sister. I came to Tin Creek looking for the person who killed her." Murmurs rippled through the congregation. "I found that person." Vera paused. "It was all of us." The murmurs stopped. Nora didn't die because one person failed her. She died because we all did, through silence, through cowardice, through putting our own comfort above her well-being, through letting her believe she had to carry her burdens alone. She held up the manuscript. Before she died, Nora wrote this. Her full story, every secret, every lie, every painful truth. She wanted it published. She wanted the world to know what happened to her. Abel shifted in his seat. Miriam's face remained impassive. I've spent the last week trying to decide what to do with this confession, whether to publish it and destroy everyone involved, whether to burn it and let the secrets die with Nora, whether truth or mercy matters more. What did you decide? Nell asked quietly. Vera looked at the manuscript in her hands. The weight of her sister's words, the burden of choice. Neither, she said. I'm not publishing it, but I'm not burning it either. She walked to the side of the church where a small bookshelf held worn hymnals and a few donated volumes. She placed the manuscript on the shelf's spine, out title visible. Tin Creek, A True Account, by Nora Quinn. Anyone who wants to read it can, Vera said. Anyone who needs to understand what happened to Nora, what she struggled with, what ultimately broke her. It will be here, preserved, available, but not forced on anyone who doesn't want to know. She turned back to the congregation. Nora wanted truth, but she also wanted mercy. She wanted to be known, but also forgiven. Those desires conflict, so I'm choosing both. The truth exists for those who seek it. Mercy exists for those who need it. And Nora gets to be remembered as what she actually was, human. The church was silent. Then Abel stood. Thank you, he said quietly. His voice was thick. For giving us a choice Nora never had. Miriam stood as well. She walked to the bookshelf and touched the manuscript gently, almost reverently. I'll make sure it's cared for, she said, that it stays accessible but protected. Owen came forward next. He stared at the manuscript for a long moment, then spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. Can I read it? Of course, Vera said. She was your daughter. You have more right than anyone. Owen's face crumpled. He nodded once and retreated to the back of the church. Doc Lydell approached, smelling of whiskey, but walking steady. I'll read it too, he said, and then I'll write my own account, what I did, what I should have done, add it to the record, let people know the whole truth. One by one people came forward, some to look at the manuscript, some to thank Vera, some to simply stand near it as if proximity to Nora's words could bring them closer to understanding. When everyone had gone, Vera stood alone in the church. The manuscript sat on the shelf, unremarkable except for what it contained. A life, a death, a truth that would live on without destroying the living. She thought of Nora, hoped her sister, wherever she was, understood. Then she walked out into the cold afternoon, leaving the dead to rest and the living to choose their own reckonings. Spring came to Tin Creek slowly, reluctantly, like something that had forgotten how to bloom. Snow melted in patches, revealing brown grass and mud, and the bones of a town that had survived another winter. Birds returned tentative at first, then with increasing confidence. The creek that gave the town its name began to flow again, breaking free from ice. 3 months had passed since Vera made her decision. She still lived in Silas's house, still slept in Nora's room, though she'd begun to make it her own. Small changes, a different quilt on the bed, her own books on the shelf. The locket no longer worn daily but kept in a drawer, visited occasionally but no longer needed. She'd become part of Tin Creek in ways she hadn't expected, not as Lorelei Webb, the mail-order bride who never married, but as Vera Quinn, Nora's sister, the woman who'd chosen mercy over revenge and given the town a chance to heal. Changes had come to Tin Creek, small but significant. Abel Frost had sold his stake in the failing mine to a consortium from Denver. With the money, he'd built a school on the edge of town. A simple building, 1 room, but solid and warm and full of light. The sign above the door read, Beatrice Frost Memorial School. Miriam taught piano there twice a week. Vera had watched through the window, once seen Miriam's face transform as children clustered around the instrument, their small hands picking out melodies. The coldness had melted from her features, replaced by something almost like joy. Owen had stopped working in the mine. He'd taken a job as the school's caretaker and assistant teacher, working with the younger children. He'd claimed Beatrice publicly in a brief notice in the territorial newspaper. No explanation, just a statement. Beatrice Quinn Hadley, beloved daughter, was born March 1883 and died January 1884. She is mourned by her father, Owen Hadley. Abel had read it and sent Owen a note, just 3 words. Thank you for truth. Doc Lydell still drank, but less. He volunteered at the school 1 day a week, teaching basic medicine and hygiene. His hands still shook, but his eyes had cleared slightly. He'd read Nora's manuscript and wept. Then he'd written his own account and added it to the shelf. 3 people had read it so far. Nell maintained the small library that had grown around Nora's manuscript. 5 more accounts had been added. Personal histories from people in Tin Creek confessions, and memories and truths. The town was slowly building an honest record of itself, one story at a time. 47 people had read Nora's manuscript. Some had been shocked. Some had cried. Some had been angry. But all of them had emerged with a more complete understanding of the woman who'd lived among them and died believing she was beyond forgiveness. On a warm afternoon in early May, Vera walked to the cemetery with Silas. They'd fallen into a routine of visiting together once a week. Not romantic, not quite friendship, something else. A companionship born of shared grief and mutual understanding. Fresh flowers grew on Nora's grave now, real flowers planted by Miriam and tended by Owen. Wildflowers mostly, simple and honest and alive. Vera knelt and touched the headstone. The granite had warmed in the spring sun. "Do you still talk to her?" Vera asked. Silas stood nearby, hands in pockets. "Sometimes, less than before. What does she say?" He smiled slightly. "She says thank you, for not making her a martyr, for letting her be human. Do you believe that? That the dead speak? I believe the living need them to. Whether they actually do or not matters less than the comfort it brings." Vera stood brushing dirt from her knees. "I think I'm going to stay." Silas looked at her. "In Tin Creek?" "Yes. For a while, anyway. Maybe longer." "As what?" Vera shrugged. "Your clerk if you still need one. A friend. A reminder that some people leave and some people come back. And sometimes that matters." "I'd like that," Silas said quietly. They stood together in the cemetery sun, warming their faces, wind carrying the scent of new grass and possibility. Around them, the dead rested under simple stones, their stories preserved in words and memories and the slow work of forgiveness. Vera had come to Tin Creek for revenge. She'd found something more complicated, a truth that included guilt and grace, anger and mercy, justice and compassion, all tangled together in ways that couldn't be separated. Nora's story would live on, not as a cautionary tale, not as a tragedy, just as a life. Flawed and struggling, and ultimately ended too soon, but lived with as much courage as Nora could manage. And maybe that was enough. Maybe being remembered honestly was its own kind of redemption. They walked back toward town together, leaving the cemetery peaceful behind them. The church bell tolled the hour. Children's voices drifted from the school. Somewhere a door opened and closed. Life continuing. Tin Creek was still dying. The mine would close within a year. Most people would leave. But for now, in this moment, the town held something it hadn't held in years. Hope. Small and fragile, but real. Vera looked back once at the cemetery, at the graves with their flowers and their stones and their silent occupants. "Goodbye, Nora," she whispered. Not to the grave, to the sister she'd carried in grief for 18 months. "Rest now. I'll remember you. The real you. That's enough." She turned toward town and walked on. Behind her, wind moved through the cemetery grass, rustling leaves and stirring petals. The dead kept their silence. The living kept their stories. And somewhere between memory and forgiveness, Nora Quinn's truth lived on. Not perfect, not heroic, just human. And that Vera had learned was the bravest thing a person could be. 3 years later, a traveling journalist passed through Tin Creek while researching frontier towns. He found the small library with its collection of personal accounts. He read Nora Quinn's manuscript and was moved by its unflinching honesty. He asked permission to publish it. Miriam Frost, now the library's curator, brought the request to Vera. They sat in the church sunlight streaming through windows, the same place where Vera had made her original decision. "What do you think?" Miriam asked. Vera was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "How many people have read it here?" 83. "And how many wrote their own accounts afterward?" 15. Vera nodded. "Then it's done what Nora wanted. It's created a space for truth. Publishing it for a wider audience would turn it into spectacle. Nora's suffered enough spectacle." Miriam smiled. "I agree. I'll tell him no." But Vera added, "Tell him he can write about the concept, about a town that created a library of honest accounts, about people choosing truth without punishment. That story might help others." Miriam stood. "You've become wise, Miss Quinn." Vera laughed. "I've become tired of anger. That's not the same as wisdom. Close enough." After Miriam left, Vera sat alone in the church. She thought of Nora, of Beatrice, of all the people who'd lived and died in this place, their stories now preserved in simple accounts on a library shelf. Outside, Tin Creek continued its slow transformation. The mine had closed as predicted, but the school thrived. People from surrounding areas sent their children there. The town hadn't died. It had changed, become something smaller, but somehow more alive. Vera had changed too. The anger that had driven her here had burned out, leaving space for something gentler. Not happiness exactly, but peace, the kind that comes from making choices you can live with. She stood and walked to the library shelf. Nora's manuscript sat there, spine-worn from used pages softened by many readings. Beside it, 15 other accounts, 15 other truths. The shelf would grow. More stories would be added. More people would choose honesty over secrecy. And Nora's legacy would be not her death, but what her death had created. A place where truth could exist without destruction, where people could be known fully and still be forgiven. Vera touched the manuscript one last time, then walked out into the spring afternoon. The cemetery waited on the hill, peaceful under blue sky. She'd visit later. She always did. But for now, she had work to do, ledgers to keep for Silas, a life to live. A town to be part of. The dead could rest, the living would remember. And in the space between truth and mercy would coexist, imperfect, incomplete, but enough, always enough. Nora Quinn's manuscript remains in Tin Creek Public Library to this day. It has been read by 432 people over the decades. Her grave is visited every spring by descendants of those who knew her. Some truths don't need to be shouted. They just need to be remembered. And in a small dying town in Wyoming, one woman's honest account of her flawed life became a testament to the power of truth tempered by compassion. Not all stories end with justice. Some end with understanding. And sometimes that's the greater gift.